Nurse Claire tore away Enzo Bellini's oxygen mask, and the wounded Mafia boss heard the ventilator breathe into empty air. His own brother ordered her restrained for attempted murder as blue emergency lights flashed across the darkened ICU. Ignoring the guards, Claire snapped a test cap onto the hose, proving to Enzo that the lethal commands were arriving from another floor. One programmed breath had already cracked his rib. Before they could disconnect it, the backup generator engaged, erasing the bedside controls and sealing the ward. Trapped inside with a traitor's trap, Claire had exactly 90 seconds to make a choice: find the circuit to black out the entire floor, or let the next mechanical breath stop his heart. Nurse Claire Donovan tore Enzo Bellini's oxygen mask away, and the wounded Mafia boss heard the ventilator breathe into empty air. The machine released a hard, mechanical sigh beside his bed. His chest did not rise. A second breath followed longer, forcing pressure through the loose hose while blue emergency lights swept across the private ICU. Enzo's left hand closed around the sheet until the tendon stood beneath his skin. The pressure cycle had already widened the fracture under his ribs. Each inhale cut shallow and sharp. Claire ignored the two armed guards moving toward her. Her navy scrubs clung to her full figure. After 10 hours beneath a plastic isolation gown, dark curls escaped from her surgical cap, but her hands stayed exact. She snapped a sealed test cap onto the hose. The ventilator should have stopped when it met a blocked circuit. Instead, the bellows drove forward. The pressure number climbed from 28 to 32. "Remote command," Claire said. "Not his lungs." Silas Bellini stepped from the glass doorway in a black Tom Ford suit untouched by blood, sweat, or disinfectant. He looked at the disconnected mask, then at Claire. "Restrain her." One guard caught her right arm. The other seized her badge lanyard and pulled her backward hard enough to stretch the collar of her scrub top across her shoulders. Claire planted both white shoes against the floor. She did not plead. She pointed at the screen. "That machine is still attacking him." Silas crossed the room and placed one polished hand on the bed rail. "You removed his air. I removed the weapon." The ventilator chirped once. Its display changed without anyone touching it. Maintenance profile loading. 89 seconds appeared in the upper corner. Claire saw the generator symbol illuminate. The normal bedside controls faded gray. Silas's security captain twisted her wrist behind her back. Pain shot through her elbow, but she kept her eyes on the pressure graph. The next programmed cycle would exceed 40 centimeters of water. Enzo's injured lung could not absorb it. His ribs would shift inward. The damaged tissue would leak air into his chest until the lung collapsed against his heart. "Manual back," Claire told Dr. Miriam Shaw. "Low volume. Slow rate." "Doctor." Shaw grabbed the emergency resuscitation bag from the wall. Silas blocked her with one arm. "No one touches him until security clears the device." Claire looked straight at Enzo. His face had lost color beneath the oxygen bruising. A thin line of sweat moved from his temple into his hair. He watched her, not Silas. Claire forced each word through the guard's grip. "Your brother's order kills you in 70 seconds. Enzo lifted 2 fingers from the sheet. The nearest guard froze. His voice came rough beneath the pressure in his chest. "Let the doctor move." Silas's hand remained across Dr. Shaw's path. Enzo shifted his gaze to him. "Move." Silas lowered his arm. "Doctor." Shaw fitted the bag to Enzo's airway and began measured breaths. Claire counted the compression of the bag 1 breath every 6 seconds, then looked past the bed toward the utility alcove. The ventilator's power cord ran into a red emergency outlet. Killing the bedside switch would change nothing. The internal battery could carry the lethal profile for 20 minutes. But the display showed a service reboot, not battery operation. The command was riding the floor's emergency branch during transfer to generator power. Claire needed to interrupt that branch long enough to corrupt the loaded profile. "Electrical closet," she said, "behind the medication room." Silas turned toward her. "You know where the breakers are. Every charge nurse does." The countdown reached 54. Claire drove her heel down across the guard's instep, not wildly directly over the laces, where the boot offered no protection. His grip opened. She twisted free, caught her dangling badge before it struck the floor, and ran. Her heavy-set body moved with purpose through the darkened ward shoulders, forward hips, clearing the narrow space between a crash cart and the locked pharmacy cabinet. The second guard caught the back of her scrub top. Fabric stretched. Claire hooked her forearm around the crash cart handle and used his momentum against him. The cart rolled sideways. Metal drawers slammed open. He hit the corner with his thigh. She reached the utility alcove at 38 seconds. The emergency panel required a hospital access badge and a physical service key. Claire pressed her badge to the reader. Green light. She pulled the brass respiratory key from the chain at her waist and opened the outer cover. Rows of numbered switches filled the box. No labels marked the hidden service bridge. She listened. Behind the wall, the transfer relay struck twice. Her father had taught her that sound when she was 12, a contactor closing under load. Claire traced the vibration through the panel with 2 fingers. Breaker, E7 trembled against the metal rail. "Show," she called. "Keep bagging when the lights die." 21 seconds. Silas reached the doorway. "Step away from that panel." Claire wrapped her hand around E7. "Then disconnect your terminal upstairs." His eyes moved not to Enzo but toward the ceiling. The reaction lasted less than a second. Claire saw it. Enzo saw her see it. 9 seconds. Silas reached inside his jacket. Claire pulled the breaker down. The entire VIP floor went black. The ventilator stopped mid-breath. Elevators halted. Magnetic locks, released with a heavy sequence of clicks. Somewhere below the generator, relay hammered against a dead branch and began printing its event record onto a narrow paper roll. In the darkness, Dr. Shaw kept the manual bag moving. Enzo drew one shallow breath on his own. Claire stood beside the open panel, back straight, one hand still locked around the breaker. Emergency lights returned in dim blue strips along the floor. Silas pointed at her before anyone checked the dead machine. She cut his life support. He said, "Detain her for attempted murder." The dead ventilator sat beside Enzo's bed, while Dr. Shaw forced air into his lungs by hand. Claire remained against the utility room wall with both wrists secured behind her. The plastic restraint cut into the soft flesh below her palms, but she kept counting each rise of Enzo's chest. 6 seconds. 6 seconds. 6. Oh. A portable monitor ran on battery power. His oxygen level held at 91, then slipped to 89. Dr. Shaw pressed her stethoscope to the left side of his chest and heard almost nothing below the fracture. "Portable ultrasound," she ordered. One guard hesitated and looked toward Silas. "Doctor." Shaw turned the probe cabinet key herself. "Block me again, and your name goes on the death certificate." The guard moved. Claire watched Silas remain near the doorway. His suit jacket stayed buttoned. His shoes never crossed the wet line, where spilled saline spread beneath the bed. Enzo watched his brother from behind the clear manual mask. His right shoulder lay strapped beneath fresh bandages from the vehicle ambush. His left side barely moved. The ultrasound showed a dark pocket where the lung had begun pulling away from the chest wall. "Doctor." Shaw placed a gloved finger on the image. "Small pneumothorax. Expanding." She looked toward Claire. "Pressure injury." Claire nodded once. The machine delivered above the ordered limit before I removed the mask. Silas stepped closer. Or she raised the limit herself. Claire turned her head toward him. Her badge still hung from the hand of the guard who had torn it from her neck. My settings were written before midnight. Records can be changed. Not the sheet in my pocket. The guard searched her navy scrub pants and removed a folded respiratory worksheet. Claire had written each setting in black ink: time oxygen, percentage pressure support, alarm limit initials. Her handwriting pressed deeply enough to mark the duplicate page underneath. "Doctor." Shaw took it before Silas could. 11:48. She said. "Pressure ceiling, 24. The dead machine had displayed 32 before the blackout. Claire met Silas's eyes. "Your killer needed 8 more. Enzo lifted one hand. "Doctor." Shaw understood and lowered the mask for 3 seconds. His words came thin but clear. "Treat the lung." She replaced the mask. A procedural team arrived with a compact chest drain kit. "Doctor." Shaw injected local anesthetic between Enzo's ribs, waited, then opened a narrow path above the fractured area. No one spoke while the tube entered. Air escaped through the water-sealed chamber in 2 sharp bursts. Enzo's fingers closed around the mattress edge. The skin across his knuckles turned pale, but he did not pull away. Claire watched his oxygen level rise to 93. Only then did she let her shoulders lower. Silas noticed. "You care whether he lives." Claire's gaze stayed on the drainage chamber. "That is my job. Your job ended when you cut the floor." The blackout saved him. A hospital security officer escorted Claire into a glass interview room across from the ICU. They did not return her badge. They did not loosen the restraint. Her full figure filled the narrow metal chair without apology. She sat upright, wet scrub fabric, cooling against her back, while Silas placed the respiratory worksheet on the table between them. "Explain the power failure." Claire looked at the wall clock. 1:37. The ventilator loaded a maintenance profile when the generator engaged. The bedside panel went read-only. The command traveled through the emergency branch, not the clinical network. "You saw that in 90 seconds. I heard the transfer relay." "Convenient." "Physical." Claire leaned forward as far as the restraint allowed. "Digital logs can be rewritten. A transfer switch makes its own record." Silas's eyes narrowed by a fraction. "What record?" "The generator room uses an analog event printer. Paper roll. Timestamp. Relay position. Branch demand." The security officer stopped writing for half a beat. Claire caught it. Silas did too. "That system was replaced." He said. "No." Claire replied. "The network display was replaced. The mechanical recorder stayed because the state inspector requires independent proof of emergency transfer." Silas stood. "You seem unusually familiar with hospital infrastructure." "My father wired half the old wing." He paused at the door. "Then he may answer questions with you." Claire's wrists pulled once against the plastic tie. No panic showed on her face, but the chair legs scraped 2 inches across the floor. "My father is outside this case." Silas looked down at her. "Not after tonight." Across the corridor. "Doctor." Shaw finished securing Enzo's chest tube. The water chamber bubbled with each shallow breath. He could not stand. He could barely raise his voice. But he had heard Silas threaten Claire's father through the glass. He tapped 2 fingers against the rail. His captain bent close. "No one goes near her family." Enzo said, "Your brother ordered a full security review." The captain answered, Enzo's eyes fixed on the badge still held by the guard. "I gave the order." The captain stepped back. Before he could move, a clinical engineer entered, carrying a tablet sealed inside an evidence sleeve. Silas returned to the ICU and took it first. The screen displayed a service history from Enzo's ventilator remote profile, access pressure limit changes, manual override. Each command carried the same credential: Claire Donovan. Badge number 61427. The first entry appeared at 1256 a.m. 16 minutes before she entered Enzo's room. Silas turned the tablet toward the bed. Her access, her commands, her blackout. Enzo stared at the glowing log while the chest tube pulled air from his injured side. On the other side of the glass, Claire saw her badge number on the screen and understood that someone had started using her identity before she ever touched the machine. Claire watched her badge number glow on the clinical engineer's tablet from across the glass. The first remote command had been entered at 1256 a.m. 16 minutes before she stepped into Enzo Bellini's room. That should have cleared her. Instead, Silas took the tablet from the engineer and carried it into the interview room like a verdict. He placed it beside Claire's handwritten worksheet. Her wrists remained bound behind the metal chair. A dark red groove circled each palm, where the plastic restraint had bitten into her skin. Silas tapped the service log with one polished finger. Your credential opened the machine. Claire looked at the timestamp, not his face. My badge opened something. That distinction will not save you. It may save your brother. The hospital security officer stood near the door, with his hand resting above his holster. Claire shifted her chair closer to the table until her full figure pressed against the hard edge. She read the sequence line by line. Remote login. Maintenance profile. Alarme. Suppression. Pressure ceiling raised. The entries looked clean. Too clean. No failed attempt. No secondary confirmation. No biometric challenge. Hospital service access required a badge scan and a fingerprint from an authorized technician whenever a ventilator was placed in executive isolation. Claire raised her eyes. Where is the biometric key? Silas did not answer. She looked toward the clinical engineer behind him. The vendor requires 2 factors. The engineer swallowed. Normally. Not normally. Contractually. Silas shut off the tablet. You knew how to bypass it. Then show the bypass. Claire leaned back. The restraint pulled against her wrists. A complete log proves me guilty. An incomplete log proves someone edited it. Silas signaled the officer. The man cut Claire's restraint, but only to move one cuff around the fixed steel ring beneath the table. Blood returned to her fingers in hot needles. He placed her hospital phone in front of her and unlocked it with her face. Silas opened her banking application. A deposit of $48,000 sat in the joint account she used to pay her father's medical bills. The transfer description read, Consulting Services. The sender was North Meridian Clinical Systems, a Bellini medical freight subcontractor. Claire's thumb hovered above the screen. Her father had never seen $48,000 in one place. Neither had she. Payment arrived yesterday. Silas said. Before the attack, Claire opened the transaction detail. Pending settlement. Money is money. Not until it clears. She checked the routing trace. The transfer had entered through an automated payroll batch, not a private wire. That mattered. Payroll systems attached employee identifiers before funds left the originating bank. If the money were a bribe, someone had disguised it badly. If it were a payroll error, the batch would contain other recipients and a reversal code. Claire looked at the security officer. Cool payroll. Silas folded his hands. You do not give orders here. Then you do not want the mistake tested. His gaze stayed on her for 2 breaths. He nodded once to the officer. The call went to North Meridian's overnight payroll line. A recorded voice requested an employer access number. The officer looked at Silas. Silas provided it from memory. Claire noticed. The line transferred them to a tired clerk named Dana. Claire kept her voice level. Was account ending 9174 included in a standard employee batch? Keys clicked over the speaker. Yes, Dana said. Temporary consultant code C14. Claire asked. What department authorized it? More keys. Then, the clicking stopped. Executive infrastructure. Silas reached for the phone. Claire covered it with her free hand. Whose approval token? Dana lowered her voice. The record is restricted. Read the issuer prefix. BMF X. Silas ended the call. Claire looked at him. Bellini Medical Freight. Executive. Not nursing. Not payroll. Not her. His sleeve shifted as he set down the phone, and she saw a square black hardware token clipped inside his cuff. The same kind used for protected executive approvals. Claire tested the innocent explanation anyway. North Meridian may have assigned the wrong account. Silas's mouth barely moved. Still searching for mercy. I am searching for origin. She opened the account history and found a $1 verification deposit made 3 weeks earlier. That ruled out a last-minute typing error. Someone had tested the account before Enzo's ambush. The verification entry carried an internal reference number, NM4438VIP. Claire memorized it before Silas locked the screen. 3 weeks, she said. Your contractor prepared my account before I knew Enzo would be admitted. You had access to the admissions schedule. I received his assignment at 107 this morning. She turned toward the officer. Medication dispensing logs will timestamp my badge on this floor at 105. The attack profile began at 1256. The officer did not move. His eyes shifted towards Silas instead. Claire saw the chain now. Her badge identity had been cloned before she arrived. Her bank account had been planted before Enzo entered the hospital. The trap did not begin with the ventilator. It began with selecting her, a senior night nurse, technical enough to understand the machine, isolated enough to blame, responsible for a disabled father whose account could be reached through medical billing records. She looked at Silas. You chose me before he was wounded. The officer's hand tightened around the back of her chair. Silas said, Careful. Claire's voice stayed low. That was the clue. Across the corridor, Enzo lay beneath a warming blanket while the chest drain pulled air from his left side. Pain medication dulled the edges of the room but did not erase Silas's answers. He had heard North Meridian. He had heard the 3-week verification deposit. Yet the evidence still pointed in opposite directions. Claire's badge controlled the machine. Claire's account received the money. Claire cut the power. She had also removed the mask before the pressure spike reached his lung. Enzo watched Silas leave the interview room and speak quietly to the security captain. Silas said one phrase too softly for the nurse at the bed to hear. Enzo read it from the shape of his brother's mouth. Bring in the father. The captain moved toward the elevator. Enzo reached for the call control, but his right shoulder failed halfway. The cord slipped across the sheet. "Doctor." Shaw caught it. "You move again. You tear the wound." Enzo pointed toward the hull. "Stop him." "Doctor." Shaw looked through the glass. The captain had already entered the service elevator. "Security does not answer to me." Enzo pressed his palm against the bed rail and forced his voice through the pane. "It answers to me." Silas appeared beside the bed, before Dr. Pound. Shaw could move. "Not while you are medically impaired." He placed a temporary command document on the rolling table. Enzo recognized his own emergency succession clause. It transferred operational control to Silas if 2 physicians declared him unable to direct security. One signature was already present. "You prepared this fast," Enzo said. Silas smoothed the paper. "I prepared it years ago." Enzo looked at the second blank line. "Shaw will not sign." Silas glanced toward the ICU director. "Then another physician will." Inside the interview room, the officer uncuffed Claire from the table and pushed a statement toward her. It admitted that she had accepted payment from a Bellini rival. It claimed she altered the ventilator to create a medical crisis. It promised protective custody if she signed. Claire read every line. No lawyer. No hospital representative. No clinical advocate. Her father's name appeared in the final paragraph as a cooperating witness. "You already went to his apartment," she said. The officer's face gave her the answer before his mouth did. "Sign." Claire folded the paper once, then again, until the confession became a narrow strip. "No." He reached for her shoulder. Claire moved first. She caught the metal chair with both hands and drove its front leg into his shin. He stumbled against the glass. Claire rose broad hips, clearing the table by inches, and pulled the officer's access card from the retractable clip at his belt. She did not strike his face. She did not reach for his weapon. She opened the interview room door and ran toward the service hall. An alarm sounded behind her. The main corridor shutters began descending. Claire slid beneath the first one before it struck the floor. The second sealed ahead of her, cutting off the elevators. She turned into the old ventilation passage beside sterile supply. Her father had shown her the hospital's smoke control system when she was a teenager. Every fire damper had a manual release hidden behind a red inspection plate. Claire tore the plate free with the stolen access card. Dust coated her navy scrubs and settled across the curves of her body. She reached inside, found the spring latch, and pulled until the damper blade lifted high enough for her to crawl through. A guard grabbed her ankle from behind. Claire kicked one's heel to wrist, and the grip vanished. She dragged herself into the dark service shaft and pulled the blade shut between them. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. "Unknown number," Claire answered, while crawling through metal dust and cold air. No one spoke. Then she heard her father's oxygen concentrator humming in the background. A man's voice said, "Your father is waiting." The call ended. Claire stopped inside the shaft. Her breathing struck the narrow walls and came back louder. She could surrender and disappear inside Silas's version of the night, or reach her father before the men who had selected her 3 weeks ago finished building the last piece of their case. She turned away from the ICU and crawled toward the old laundry exit. Behind her, security found the unsigned confession on the floor. Silas looked at the empty interview room and gave the captain one order: "Mark, hair armed." Claire carried no weapon. By the time she reached the loading level, every Bellini guard in the hospital had been told she did. The laundry exit opened into a concrete service bay beneath the hospital. Freezing air poured through the half-raised loading door. Claire dropped from the ventilation ledge and landed hard on both knees. Pain climbed through her thighs, but she stood before the guards reached the corridor. Dust streaked her navy scrubs. One sleeve had torn at the shoulder. Her full figure cast a solid shadow beneath the loading lights, unhidden, unapologetic. She crossed between linen carts and reached the employee parking ramp. Her phone showed no service. Silas had disabled her hospital account and remote access, but the medication application on her device still held a cached receipt from 105 a.m. It showed her first badge scan on the ICU floor. 9 minutes after the malicious profile began, Claire photographed the screen with the phone's offline camera, then copied the timestamp by hand across the inside of her forearm with a marker from the loading desk. Digital evidence could vanish. Ink on skin required someone to touch her. She found an emergency landline near the dock and called her father's apartment. 4 rings. No answer. She called his building. Superintendent. The older woman picked up, whispering. 2 men came for him. They said, "Hospital transfer." Claire gripped the handset until the plastic creaked. Did he leave? He locked the door. They are still outside. Call the fire department. Report a gas smell. Claire, do it. They cannot control city fire response. She ended the call before Silas could trace it through the switchboard. Then she dialed Dr. Shaw's direct extension. The line connected, but another voice answered. Silas, return to the ICU. Claire looked at the frozen ramp leading out. Release my father. Sign the statement. Your payment was planted 3 weeks early. Then prove it. I will. She hung up. Silas walked back into Enzo's room, carrying a tablet and a black evidence folder. The chest tube remained taped to Enzo's side. Each breath moved the water column a fraction. Dr. Shaw had reduced his oxygen, but he still could not sit upright without losing color. Silas placed the tablet where Enzo could see it. Security footage began at 1:12 a.m. Claire entered the room. She reached for the oxygen mask. The video skipped half a second, too small to notice without searching. The loose hose did not appear. The machine's empty breath was gone. Claire pulled the mask away. Enzo's body yerked. The next angle showed her running to the electrical panel. Another skip erased the test cap. Another removed Dr. Shaw's manual ventilation. Then the floor went black. When the picture returned, Claire stood beside the breaker while Enzo's oxygen level fell. The edit built a clean story. She removed air. She cut power. She fled. Silas opened the folder. Inside sat the banking record, the cloned service log, the unsigned confession, photographed on the interview room floor, and a still image of Claire crawling through the smoke control shaft. She assaulted an officer. Silas said. She escaped custody. Enzo watched the footage again. Pain blurred the edges of the screen, but not the sequence. Claire's actions looked deliberate. Her account contained Bellini contractor, money. Her badge appeared inside the ventilator. Her escape placed her beyond immediate questioning. Enzo asked, "Where is her father?" Silas did not blink. Safe. That was not an answer. He is a possible co-conspirator. Enzo's fingers pressed into the bed rail. You threatened him before she ran. Silas closed the folder. She ran because she was exposed. Dr. Shaw stepped between the tablet and the bed. The footage omits clinical facts. Silas looked at her. Name 1. The machine continued cycling after disconnection. Not visible, because this copy is incomplete. Can you prove alteration? Dr. Shaw pointed toward the ventilator. The original video server records frame continuity. Silas replied, The server lost power. The camera buffer did not. For the first time, Silas's gaze moved toward the ceiling camera. Doctor Shaw saw it. Enzo saw it. The expression disappeared quickly, but it left a mark. Silas recovered by sliding the medical incapacity document toward Dr. Shaw. Sign. She read the clause. No. He cannot direct an armed organization from a chest drain. That is not a medical diagnosis. It is visible. So is your conflict of interest. Silas stepped closer. Choose your employment carefully. Doctor. Shaw set the document on the floor. Choose your witness carefully. Silas signaled the security captain. 2 guards escorted her from the room under the label of Contamination Review. Enzo tried to rise. The chest tube pulled tight against his skin. A white flash crossed his vision. Silas pressed one hand against his uninjured shoulder and forced him back, not violently, just enough to remind him that his body no longer obeyed him. You need rest, Silas said. Enzo stared at the hand until Silas removed it. You need distance. At doi patruzeci și opt a. M. Claire reached the parking level exit and found a Bellini sedan blocking the ramp. Its headlights filled the concrete bay. She stepped behind a support pillar before the rear door opened. The security captain emerged with 2 men. He held her torn badge lanyard between 2 fingers. Claire Donovan. Come out. She stayed still. Your father is alive. The statement carried no reassurance. It carried leverage. Claire looked toward the sprinkler pipe overhead. Red directional arrows marked the old fire control zone. She knew the ramp tied into the hospital's smoke purge system. Pulling the alarm would close the loading shutters, but it would also start the exhaust fans and release the pedestrian fire door. She moved along the pillar until her hand reached the manual station. The captain saw the motion. Do not. Claire pulled it. Bells struck through the concrete. Metal shutters began lowering behind the sedan. The captain lunged. Claire ducked beneath his arm and drove her shoulder into his ribs. Her body weight moved him half a step enough. She reached the fire door. One guard caught the back of her torn scrub top. Claire twisted free, leaving fabric in his fist, and forced herself through the narrowing gap. The door slammed between them. Outside cold rain struck her bare shoulder. She ran toward the employee bus stop without looking back. Her phone regained 1 bar of service. A voicemail arrived from her father. His voice sounded breathless but steady. I did not open the door. Fire department is here. Do not come home. Claire stopped beneath the concrete overhang. Relief lasted 1 second. Then another message appeared from Dr. Shaw. 3 words. They altered everything. Enzo signed it. Inside the ICU, Enzo studied the temporary capture order on the rolling table. It did not authorize execution. It did not authorize interrogation outside the hospital. It ordered Bellini personnel to locate Claire, secure her, and return her alive. Silas had placed the signature line beneath the evidence summary. Enzo read the summary twice. The badge log, the bank transfer, the footage, the assault, the escape. Each item came from a different system. Together they formed the kind of partial evidence that had kept him alive for 20 years. Men who ignored converging facts died early. Men who trusted instinct over records died sooner. Yet Claire had saved him. Or she had created the danger, then controlled the rescue. Enzo looked at the first command timestamp again. ER56, he asked Silas. When was she assigned to my room? Before midnight. The answer came too fast. Enzo looked toward the empty doorway, where Dr. Shaw had stood. Show me the assignment record. Silas placed another tablet beside him. The screen listed Claire at 124, 1A. M. The medication receipt in her cached phone showed 105, but Enzo had not seen it. He had only the record Silas controlled. Pain medication dragged at his focus. The water chamber beside his bed bubbled once. He signed. Alive. Enzo said, "No one touches her, father." Silas lifted the order. Understood. He turned before Enzo saw the corner of his mouth rise. Claire boarded the first city bus, leaving the medical district. The driver looked at her torn scrubs, dust-streaked arms, and hospital socks inside wet white shoes. He said nothing. She sat beneath the rear camera and pressed both hands around her phone. "Doctor." Shaw's message remained on the screen. Enzo signed it. Claire knew what that meant. He had seen the edited footage. He had seen the planted payment. He had chosen the system that accused her over the nurse, who kept his lung from collapsing. She did not cry. She opened the voicemail from her father again and listened for background sounds. Fire engine idle. Apartment hallway echo. A second male voice saying, "Elevator clear." Her father was still inside his building. Safe for the moment. Claire opened a blank note and entered the facts she could prove. Badge. Command. Before assignment. $1 verification. 3 weeks earlier. Executive payroll. Prefix. Missing biometric factor generator. Relay. Paper record. Camera buffer continuity. 6 facts. No theories. No plea. She sent the list to Dr. Shaw through a personal encrypted address they had once used for state inspection documents. The message failed. Hospital security had blocked Claire's account at the gateway. At the next stop, 2 black SUVs turned onto the avenue behind the bus. Claire watched them through the rain-streaked rear window. She got off before the doors closed, crossed against traffic, and disappeared into the underground service entrance of an unfinished clinic annex. 20 minutes later, Silas showed Enzo a traffic camera still of Claire entering the construction site. "She is meeting someone," he said. Enzo looked at the image of Claire, running deeper underground. He did not know she was heading toward the only independent mechanical route back into the hospital. He believed she was escaping him. That mistake gave Silas exactly the time he needed to move Enzo before dawn. The transport ventilator began forcing Enzo's injured lung before anyone realized Claire had been right twice. At Patrushasia. M. A private medical crew rolled the unit into the ICU under Silas Bellini's transfer order. Its screen displayed safe settings. The printed checklist matched Dr. Shaw's prescription. The respiratory therapist connected the circuit, confirmed oxygen flow, and watched the first assisted breath lift Enzo's chest. The second breath drove deeper. The third made the water column in his chest drain chamber jump hard enough to strike the plastic cap. Enzo's left hand crushed the sheet beneath his palm. His oxygen level dropped from 94 to 88, while the monitor continued displaying a normal respiratory rate. The therapist increased oxygen instead of disconnecting the machine. Doctor. Shaw crossed the room, pulled the hose free, and returned Enzo to the manual bag. Air hissed through the empty circuit. The transport ventilator continued cycling. Silas stood behind the medical crew in the same black suit, his cuffs clean, his breathing undisturbed. "Stop the second pressure cycle," he ordered. "Doctor." Shaw's hand froze around the manual bag. No one had identified a second cycle. No one had even confirmed the first. Enzo turned his head toward his brother. Pain medication slowed the movement, but not his attention. "Who told you there were 2? Silas looked at the screen. "I saw the pattern. The display showed normal." "Doctor." Shaw kept compressing the bag every 6 seconds. Only the hidden pressure sensor caught it. Silas stepped toward the disconnected unit. Then, destroy it. Enzo's fingers lifted from the sheet. Preserve it. Silas stopped. A vein rose along the back of his hand, then disappeared beneath his cuff as he released the bed rail. Doctor. Shaw ordered the transfer cancelled until Enzo's lungs stabilized. Silas presented the temporary command authority and demanded another physician approve the move. The new physician remained outside the glass, reading Enzo's chest imaging and refusing to enter while armed men controlled the ward. Enzo watched the delay spread. Through the operation Claire had once managed in seconds, no one knew which device could be trusted. No one knew whether the emergency outlets still carried the hidden service command. The transport crew would not touch the ventilator again. The respiratory therapist kept looking toward the door, as if Claire might return and explain the machine. She did not. Her absence left the ICU full of expensive equipment, and no one willing to believe what it showed. Doctor. Shaw removed the duplicate respiratory worksheet from beneath a stack of forms. Claire's pen pressure had marked the sheet under her original notes. 1148 p.m. Pressure. Ceiling. 24. Alarm. Check. Complete secondary verification, pending because the assigned respiratory technician had not arrived. Doctor. Shaw placed the duplicate beside the altered service log. Your evidence says she changed the pressure at 1256, she told Enzo. Her habit says she documented every adjustment before touching the controls. Silas folded his arms. A habit is not proof. Doctor. Shaw tapped the indented paper. 14 years without one undocumented change is a contradiction. Enzo studied the duplicate. Claire's initials had been pressed into the fibers hard enough to remain after the top page disappeared. Whoever forged the digital log had expected everyone to trust the screen. They had not expected her to write by hand. Enzo asked for Claire's assignment record again. Silas showed the same tablet entry, 1241 a.m. Doctor. Shaw retrieved the medication dispenser's offline receipt from the unit printer. Claire's badge first entered the ICU medication system at 105. The assignment roster carried a digital revision stamp at 222 after Claire had been detained. Silas said scheduling corrections were routine. Enzo looked at the printed receipt. Who revised it? Hospital staffing. Name. Silas's eyes shifted toward the security captain. The captain unlocked his phone, but no staffing supervisor answered. Enzo pointed toward the planted bank transfer. And the payment. Silas opened the record. $48,000. North Meridian Clinical Systems. Executive Infrastructure. Claire's father listed as joint owner. Enzo read the $1 verification entry from 3 weeks earlier. The amount was small enough to hide inside routine banking noise. The date was not. Claire had not known Enzo would be ambushed. She had not known she would be assigned to his room. Someone else had known they needed an account attached to her name before the crime occurred. Enzo pressed 2 fingers against the edge of the rolling table until the tendons pulled white beneath his skin. Freeze the money, Silas replied. Already done. Enzo lifted his gaze. I did not order that. You were unconscious. You prepared the response before I saw the account. Silas closed the file. I protected the family. You protected the story. Beneath the unfinished clinic, Annex Claire moved through a maintenance tunnel carrying a flashlight, a coil of copper wire, and the hospital access card she had taken from the security officer. Rainwater darkened the torn shoulder of her scrubs. Concrete dust streaked the full curve of her hips and thighs where she had crawled through the damper shaft. She did not cover herself. She did not slow down. Her father had once walked these tunnels with a tool belt hanging beneath his stomach and told her that buildings lied less than people. Current left heat. Relays left marks. Mechanical switches remembered every hand that moved them. Claire reached the basement fire door and found the access reader disabled. She stripped 2 inches of insulation from the copper wire, bridged the old release contacts, and opened the lock without touching the hospital network. Inside the generator room vibrated under backup load. The analog event recorder sat behind a steel cabinet marked Transfer Switch B. A narrow paper strip curled behind the inspection window. Claire could see printed timestamps, but the cabinet carried a numbered tamper seal. Breaking it alone would damage chain of custody. She photographed the seal number and the visible section of tape. At 11542, the VIP emergency branch energized. At 1544, a remote service load appeared from Executive Bridge 14. At 11603, Claire opened. Breaker, E7. The tape proved the malicious command had traveled through the executive bridge before she cut the power. It did not identify the person. It proved the official story was incomplete. Footsteps crossed the service corridor. Claire shut off her flashlight and moved behind the generator housing. 2 Bellini guards entered with bolt cutters and a red evidence bag. One photographed the cabinet. The other raised the cutter toward the numbered seal. Silas was not waiting for a formal investigation. He was destroying the only independent record. Claire wrapped the copper wire around the manual smoke purge lever beside her. When the first guard broke the seal, she pulled. Ceiling fans roared to life. The pressure door slammed between the 2 men. Loose paper and dust spiraled through the room. Claire drove the flashlight into the nearer guard's wrist before he could reach his weapon. The bolt cutters struck the floor. She caught them, cut the remaining cabinet latch, and took the entire paper roll without touching the printed surface. The second guard pounded against the pressure door. Claire fed the tape into a clean evidence sleeve from the wall inspection kit, wrote the time seal number and her initials across the flap. She did not have an independent witness. She had the photographs taken before the breach. She had the torn numbered seal left inside the cabinet. She had the guard's own red evidence bag on the floor. Not enough for conviction, but enough to survive deletion. She backed toward the tunnel. A black sedan blocked the annex exit above her. Silas's men had found both routes. In the ICU, Enzo gave the security captain a controlled instruction. Tell Silas the transfer. We'll use the west loading dock at 5. The captain hesitated. He is standing outside. Tell him privately. The message left the room. Enzo then told Doctor. Sure. The transfer would not happen at all. 4 minutes later, the west loading dock cameras showed Bellini vehicles arriving before any medical team had received a route. Silas returned to the bedside, carrying a new transfer approval. The west dock is secure. Enzo looked at the clock. I never authorized the west dock. Silas held the paper motionless. Your captain misunderstood. He told only you. The water in Enzo's chest chamber pulsed with each shallow breath. He could not stand. He could not reach the basement. He could still control what information entered the system. 3 contradictions now lay in front of him. Claire's stable documentation, an impossible assignment, timeline, and Silas's knowledge of a hidden second pressure cycle before the clinicians confirmed it. Doubt became action. Enzo took the transfer approval, tore it once, and dropped both halves beside the bed. No transfer. Silas stepped forward. Enzo pointed toward the door. Leave my floor. Silas's nostrils widened once. Then he turned. The moment he crossed the glass threshold, Enzo gave the captain a second order. Find Claire before he does. No restraints. No weapons drawn. The captain looked toward Silas's back. And if she refuses... Enzo pressed one hand over the bandage beneath his left ribs. Then you return without her. Claire reached the end of the maintenance tunnel and found Enzo Bellini waiting on the other side of the steel gate. He sat in a hospital transport chair beneath a charcoal overcoat thrown over his gown. A portable oxygen line ran beneath his nose. The chest drain chamber rested in a bracket beside his left leg, clear tubing taped along his ribs. "Doctor!" Shaw stood behind him, with one hand on the chair and fury carved into every movement. The security captain remained 10 feet away, weapon-holstered hands visible. Claire stopped in the tunnel. She held the sealed paper roll against her chest. Her torn navy scrubs exposed one shoulder to the cold service air. Dust had settled into the dark curls escaping her cap. Her breathing came hard from the climb, but her head stayed high. "You signed the order," she said. Enzo did not deny it. "I did. Your men marked me armed." Silas changed the language. "You gave him the paper." Enzo's hand rested beside the drainage chamber. "Yes." Claire looked at Doctor. "Sure. Why is he out of bed?" "Because he threatened to remove his own chest tube," Enzo said. "She stopped me." Claire's eyes returned to him. "Good. You still follow one competent woman." The captain shifted his weight. Enzo raised 2 fingers. The man did not move again. "I came for the evidence," Enzo said. Claire tightened her grip on the sleeve. "Then leave. Silas has your father watched." "I know. I can protect him." "Protection is not payment for obedience." Enzo drew one controlled breath. The motion pulled at the taped tube. Sweat gathered beneath his hairline, but he kept his voice level. "State your terms." Claire stepped closer to the gate, without opening it. "Doctor, Shaw controls every medical decision. Your guards leave the generator room. No one touches the paper tape. My father goes to a location chosen by me, not your family. The accusation stays active until the evidence clears me. You do not bury it, because it embarrasses you." The captain looked toward Enzo. Enzo answered Claire. "Agreed. Not enough." She pointed toward Silas's temporary command order folded inside Enzo's coat. "Revoke his hospital authority. The shareholder clause gives him emergency access until I appear before the board. Then, appear." "Doctor," Shaw said. "He cannot stand for a hearing." Claire looked at Enzo's chest tube. "He does not need to stand." Enzo reached inside the coat and handed his phone to Doctor. "Shaw, record this." She activated the camera. Enzo faced the lens. "Silas Bellini no longer directs my medical care, my transport, or security inside this hospital. Doctor, Miriam Shaw holds clinical authority. Claire Donovan's father is not a suspect. Any order using my name without my voice is invalid." He paused to breathe. "Disobey and lose access to every Bellini contract." Doctor, Shaw saved the recording to the hospital's offline incident archive. Claire unlocked the gate. They entered the generator room together. The first guard, Claire had disarmed, sat against the wall, with one wrist swelling beneath a cold pack. The second stood behind the open pressure door. Enzo looked at both men. Outside, one began. "Mr. Bellini, your brother," ordered Enzo, pointed toward the corridor. "Choose." They left. Claire closed the door and placed the evidence sleeve on a clean inspection table. She photographed the broken seal, the cabinet hinge, the red evidence bag, and the bolt cutters before touching anything else. Doctor. Shaw documented each image on the offline camera. Claire then removed the paper roll with gloved hands and flattened it beneath two clear acrylic rulers. The printout showed generator, transfer time, branch, load, breaker response, and service origin. Enzo leaned forward in the chair. Pain pulled his breathing shallow. Claire did not soften her explanation. This line is the power transfer. This one is the ventilator service load. It entered through executive bridge 14. My breaker opened 19 seconds later. Enzo traced the route without touching the paper. 14 is the foundation floor. Access proves means. Silas controlled the foundation. So did 3 contractors and your finance office. Enzo looked at her. You are defending him. Claire's shoulders squared beneath the torn scrubs. I am defending the standard that should have protected me. Doctor. Shaw compared the relay time with the medication dispenser receipt and Claire's handwritten worksheet. 3 independent systems aligned. Claire had entered the ICU after the malicious profile began. She had documented safe settings before the first pressure spike. Her blackout interrupted a command already moving through the executive bridge. Enzo watched the timeline build across the table. Why could you not send this? Claire held up her disabled phone. Silas blocked my hospital account. Your security controlled the internal network. My personal message to Doctor. Shaw failed at the gateway. Doctor. Shaw opened the incident archive and found the rejection notice. The block had been issued from an executive security console at 2311 minute after Claire first mentioned the analog recorder. Enzo's thumb pressed into the armrest until the skin flattened beneath the nail. He isolated you after learning what could survive. Claire nodded. Then he sent men to break the seal. She pointed to the red bag. They came prepared to remove the paper, not inspect it. Enzo studied the bag's printed evidence number. It belonged to Bellini Corporate Security, not the hospital. Silas had bypassed the hospital chain of custody before any formal seizure order existed. A heavy strike hit the generator room door. Then another. The overhead light switched from white to red. The ventilation fan stopped. A computerized voice announced a fuel vapor alert and ordered immediate evacuation. Claire smelled the air. Diesel, but faint. Too faint for a real rupture. She crossed to the fuel sensor panel. The alarm channel showed manual activation from the executive bridge. He is flushing us out, she said. Doctor. Shaw moved behind Enzo's chair. We evacuate. Claire checked the chest drain line. The chamber had to remain below Enzo's ribs. The tunnel exit required 3 flights of incline. He would not make it without worsening the pneumothorax. The main door led directly to Silas's security team. Claire opened the sensor housing and inspected the terminals. No fuel residue. No pressure change. Someone had triggered the alarm through the building management system, but the mechanical exhaust remained disabled. The trap depended on them believing the screen. Claire removed the sensor fuse. The alarm continued. Valve's channel, she said. Local circuit is dead. Enzo looked toward the pounding door. Can you hold it? For 2 minutes. What changes in 2? Claire pointed at the analog printer. We give the system something else to remember. She rewired the dead alarm relay through the generator recorder, using the copper wire from her pocket and the spare inspection terminals beside the cabinet. Every remote command now produced a physical mark on the paper roll. Doctor. Shaw kept the camera trained on Claire's hands. Enzo called the foundation office from his personal phone. Silas answered after 1 ring. You should be in bed. Enzo looked at Claire. She nodded toward the recorder. Clear the fuel alarm, Enzo said. The basement is compromised. By what? A ruptured line. There is no rupture. The answer came before any facilities inspection. Claire watched the printer strike a new line. Executive bridge. 14 manual alarm hold. Enzo kept his voice flat. How do you know? Silas ended the call. The pounding outside stopped. Footsteps retreated down the corridor. Claire tore the new section from the printer along the guide edge and sealed it separately. Adversarial contradiction, she said. He knew the physical state of a room he had not entered, and his terminal held the false alarm after you challenged him. Enzo looked at the 2 sealed records. Is that enough? Enough to reopen the case. Not enough to convict him. What do you need? Claire met his eyes across the inspection table. A command only the killer would send, and proof of why he needed you dead before 11:30. The alliance began without trust. Claire kept the relay tape. Dr. Shaw kept the photographs. Enzo kept control of the security captain, but removed every Bellini guard from the mechanical floor. Claire arranged for her father to leave his apartment with city firefighters and enter a rehabilitation center under Dr. Shaw's name. Enzo did not choose the location. He did not ask for it. He signed the payment guarantee without placing Bellini personnel inside. When the paperwork was complete, Claire handed him a copy of the event timeline. Not the original evidence. You get facts, she said. Not custody. Enzo accepted the pages. Understood. A notification appeared on his phone. Silas had moved the shareholder ratification from noon to 1130 and added an emergency proxy vote to the hospital board hearing. Canceling the event would activate his temporary authority automatically. Claire read the notice over Enzo's shoulder. The black hardware token she had seen beneath Silas's cuff returned to her mind, along with the executive payroll prefix and the remote command line. She tapped the terminal code on the relay tape. We build him a ventilator that does not exist. Enzo looked up. Claire's finger remained on executive bridge. 14. We give the false address to one person. When the lethal command arrives, we capture the token signature. Enzo asked. And if he sees the trap, Claire sealed the final evidence sleeve. Then he proves he understands the system well enough to avoid it. She stepped past his chair and opened the door herself. Either way, he moves. Claire built the false ventilator before sunrise and made Enzo Bellini surrender control of the trap before she powered it on. At 5:30, she opt-a. M. Doctor. Shaw wheeled an out-of-service training unit into the hospital simulation lab. The device had never treated a patient. Its internal battery had been removed. A clear plastic test lung hung from the rail beneath it, calibrated pressure paper folded inside the rubber chamber. Claire had changed into clean plum scrubs borrowed from Central Supply. The plain fabric followed her full figure without apology. A fresh bandage covered the scrape along her shoulder. Her gray-green eyes stayed on the machine while Enzo waited in a transport chair beside the door. Oxygen line beneath his nose, chest drain chamber secured below his left ribs. He had brought no armed guards into the lab. He had followed her condition. Tessa Hale, the hospital's cybersecurity director, opened a locked case and removed a network capture appliance approved for medical device investigations. She connected it between the training ventilator and an isolated service gateway. No internet. No patient network. No remote path except the one they created. This records every packet before it reaches the machine. Tessa said, Write once, storage. No deletion command. Claire placed the mechanical pressure strip inside the test lung and sealed the chamber. And this records what the machine actually does. Enzo looked from the digital recorder to the paper inside the lung. 2 systems, 2 witnesses. Claire said, "Neither trusts the other." Tessa created 3 false device identities using retired asset numbers from the hospital inventory. Each identity pointed to the same isolated training unit, but each carried a different asset tag and service address. Silas received one address through a private foundation briefing, VNT 9B 771. The North Meridian vendor liaison received VNT 9 B842. Enzo's security captain received VNT 9 B906. The messages claimed Enzo had been moved to a protected respiratory suite before the board hearing. Each recipient saw only one address. Claire dictated the medical details herself enough to make the lie credible, never enough to endanger a real patient. Reduced lung compliance. Left chest drain. Pressure limit 22. Remote maintenance restricted. She stopped Tessa before the messages were sent. No invented emergency. Tessa looked at her. Why? Because panic creates innocent access. We need deliberate intent. Enzo watched Claire revise the language until no legitimate technician had reason to touch the device. Then he authorized the distribution from his own account. "Once this leaves," he said. "Silas may know. I doubt him." Claire checked the seal on the test lung. "He already knows." This tells us how he responds. The first access arrived 11 minutes later. VNT 9B 842, the address given to North Meridian, received a routine inventory query. The vendor certificate matched a scheduled audit account. No settings changed. Tessa marked it benign and preserved the session. 7 minutes after that, the security captain's address received no traffic at all. At 6:04, Silas's address received a silent authentication handshake. No command followed. The session presented a valid Bellini executive certificate, but the hardware token field had been stripped from the visible log. Tessa leaned closer to the capture screen. Someone knew which field we needed. Claire did not touch the keyboard. Can the gateway strip it? Not after the signature reaches this appliance. Tessa opened the raw packet record. Beneath the display layer sat a token serial, #BMFX1402. She compared it with the hospital's registered executive credentials. The token belonged to Silas's foundation terminal. Enzo's thumb pressed against the chair arm until the nail lost color. "We have him." Claire shook her head. "We have his tool asking whether the door exists. His token. Possession is not intent. He can claim theft. He can claim routine oversight. We need the lethal command." Enzo looked at the empty test lung. "Then we wait." Claire turned toward him. "No, we make waiting expensive." She asked one question that shifted the investigation away from the machine. What becomes irreversible at 11:30? Enzo called Bellini's outside counsel and ordered a litigation hold on every document connected to the emergency proxy. The lawyer did not search Silas's files manually. She preserved the company's board data room through its automatic version, archive and independent service that recorded uploads before users could revise them. Atchasse 41. A signed draft agreement appeared in the archive. Silas had negotiated the sale of Bellini Medical Freight's protected hospital corridors to a shell company controlled by a rival trafficking consortium. The price increased if Silas obtained Enzo's voting proxy before 1130. It fell to 0 if Enzo appeared competent before the board, or if the proxy vote was delayed. The agreement did not order murder. It established motive and a deadline. Claire read the condition twice. He cannot cancel the hearing. Enzo said, "Neither can we. A cancellation activates his temporary proxy. Then the hearing is not only his deadline." Claire placed the agreement beside the relay tape. "It is where he must look legitimate." "Doctor." Shaw folded her arms. "And where you intend to accuse him?" "Not yet," Claire said. "If we reveal level 1 and level 2 now, he attacks the chain. He calls the paper tape contaminated. He calls the token stolen. He calls the sale a contingency plan." Enzo asked. "What does he fail to explain?" Claire tapped the false ventilator address. "A lethal command sent, after he believes I am discredited and you are under his control. They built a non-technical fallback before leaving the lab. Tessa mounted a small analog pressure gauge on the test lung and placed a battery-powered camera inside a sealed evidence box." "Doctor." Shaw signed the calibration sheet. Claire signed the device setup. Tessa signed the network configuration. Enzo did not sign the clinical chain. His financial interest made him a compromised witness. Claire required him to stand outside the evidence line. He accepted the exclusion without argument. The original relay tape went into the hospital legal safe. "Doctor." Shaw kept one photographed copy in the offline incident archive. Tessa wrote the packet capture to 2 optical discs, one locked with the board secretary, one delivered to outside counsel. Claire retained no sole copy. Silas could no longer erase the case by taking her. He could still damage it by proving the trap was manipulated. She added one last control. The lethal pressure command would never reach the motor. Tessa placed a physical isolator between the gateway and the training unit. The network recorder would capture intent. The analog lung would record only a harmless diagnostic pulse. Claire looked at Enzo. "No one gets hurt for evidence." He nodded. "Your rule." "The rule." At 712, the false device received a second handshake from Silas's token. This time, the request searched for backup power status and local override availability, the same conditions used during the attack on Enzo. Tessa preserved it. Claire checked the clock. 4 hours remained before the hearing. Then every monitor in the simulation lab went dark. The isolated capture appliance stayed alive on its internal battery, but the executive service gateway lost power. Smoke alarms activated on the foundation floor. A hospital alert reported an electrical fire inside Silas's office. By the time facilities reached the room, the executive terminal had melted beneath a ruptured suppression pipe. The physical token was gone. Silas arrived at the lab with board counsel and 3 hospital security officers. Water darkened one shoulder of his black suit. He placed a printed audit notice on the table. Unauthorized medical device access occurred under Claire Donovan's direction. His eyes moved to the false ventilator. "This laboratory is sealed." Tessa stepped between him and the capture appliance. "Hospital cybersecurity controls this evidence." Silas lifted a second document. "Not after the board suspended you 8 minutes ago." Claire looked toward Enzo. His face revealed nothing. Silas had moved faster than the trap. He had destroyed the visible terminal, removed the token, and converted their countermeasure into proof that Claire had manipulated a ventilator network. Hospital security disconnected the lab from the corridor. The false device remained silent. The lethal command had not arrived. Silas pointed toward Claire. "The hearing begins in 3 hours. She enters it as the accused." Silas entered the hospital atrium at 1047 a.m. with the tower's board behind him, and Claire entered through a service corridor under armed escort. The hearing had been accelerated by 43 minutes. Rows of chairs faced a raised platform beneath 6 stories of glass. Hospital trustees sat beside Bellini shareholders. Legal observers occupied the front row. The event could not be delayed without activating Silas's emergency proxy. He had turned time into a weapon. Claire's plum scrubs had been replaced by the same navy uniform she wore during the attack, returned from evidence in a clear plastic bag, wrinkled dust, marked one shoulder, roughly repaired. Silas wanted the audience to see a night nurse dragged from restricted areas, not the woman who had built the evidence chain. Claire walked with her back straight. The officers did not touch her until they reached the loading wing access door. One placed a hand on her upper arm. Claire stopped. "Remove it." He looked toward Enzo's security captain. The captain nodded. The hand came away. Claire continued, under her own power. Across the atrium, Enzo sat at the board table in a tailored black suit placed over his hospital shirt. The suit concealed the chest tube dressing but not the portable drain chamber beside his chair. His skin had gone pale beneath the lights. He did not rise. He did not pretend strength his body did not possess. The damage to the trap surfaced before testimony began. Silas had obtained a board order sealing the simulation lab. He claimed Claire had created false asset records, used stolen credentials, and attempted to fabricate a remote attack after receiving contractor money. The melted executive terminal could no longer be examined. The hardware token remained missing. Tessa Hale had been suspended for bypassing board notification rules. Dr. Shaw's access to the incident archive had been restricted, pending review. Silas presented the destruction as an attack against himself. A fire erased the one terminal she intended to blame. He said. His words carried no confession, only structure. Convenient evidence appeared after she escaped custody. Claire stood beside outside counsel and listened. The argument was strong because he used true events stripped of cause. She had escaped. She had entered the generator room. She had created false device identities. She had used an isolated network without board approval. Every action had a lawful purpose, but each could be reframed as concealment. Enzo asked one question from the table. "Where is the token?" Silas looked at him. "Stolen during the fire." "By whom?" Silas turned toward Claire. "The woman who knew we needed it." Several trustees shifted in their seats. No one needed to speak. The accusation had found a shape they could repeat. Claire and Enzo had prepared for that shape in the half hour before the hearing. Inside a private treatment room, Dr. Shaw had checked his chest tube while Claire reviewed the bait address one final time. Silas believed VNT9B771 represented Enzo's hidden ventilator. He also believed the simulation lab had been sealed and its gateway disconnected. Tessa had preserved one path he did not know. Existed a hospital-approved disaster recovery mirror located in the loading wing. The mirror could receive signed service traffic, but could not transmit commands to any machine. Claire needed Silas to believe the evidence chain had collapsed. Enzo needed to appear convinced by the accusation. "You will order my detention," Claire said. Enzo's hand remained open on the treatment table. "He may take you beyond the atrium. Your captain controls the first corridor. Dr. Shaw controls the medical transfer door. After that, I control the smoke shutters." Enzo looked at the bruises circling her wrists. "I will not repeat the first order." Claire met his eyes. "Then do not lie to yourself about this one. I am choosing the risk." He held her gaze for one breath, then nodded. "Your choice. Your signal ends it. My signal is the phrase, 'Check the chamber.' Until then, you do not move." Enzo accepted the boundary. No promise of rescue. No possessive claim. Only roles. At 1104, the board chair asked Enzo whether he still trusted Claire Donovan's account. Enzo looked across the atrium at her. The distance between them held every mistake he had made. No, he said. Claire did not lower her head. Silas's fingers relaxed around the edge of his folder. Enzo continued. Detain her pending the vote. The words cut through the hearing, without volume. Hospital security moved. Claire allowed them to take her through the loading wing door. Silas watched until the door closed, then submitted the emergency proxy for immediate ratification. In the corridor, the officers led Claire past the disaster recovery closet, instead of stopping. The captain had been replaced. The new escort wore Bellini contractor badges and carried no hospital radios. Silas had changed the personnel. After learning Enzo's plan involved the loading wing, Claire counted doors. 3 to the smoke control panel, 2 to the vehicle ramp, 1 to the old decontamination bay. The officer behind her locked a hand around her elbow. She drove her heel onto the inside of his ankle and turned with his collapsing weight. The second man reached for her waist. Claire caught the edge of a linen cart, rolled it between them, and slammed the cart into the wall switch. Decontamination shutters dropped at both ends of the corridor. She cleared the first. They did not. Metal struck concrete behind her. Claire reached the disaster recovery closet and found its reader disabled. She removed the silver watch inherited from her mother and opened the back plate with her thumbnail. Inside, beneath the old photograph she kept folded there, sat a short copper contact strip her father had cut for her after the generator room escape. She bridged the reader's fire release terminals. The lock clicked. Tessa waited inside with the capture appliance running on battery power. Silas killed the main gateway. Tessa said, "The mirror still listens." On screen, the false address remained dormant. Claire checked the clock. 11:12. The proxy vote had begun. If Silas believed Enzo had rejected her, he no longer needed to hide the final attack behind the first framing. He needed Enzo medically incapable before the vote closed. Claire opened the false device profile and changed one field visible only to the attacker. Transport mode. Active local override. Disabled. Tessa stared at her. That invites a remote pressure command. It tells him Enzo is moving and cannot stop it. He may use a new token. The service certificate still chains back to an issuer. Claire placed the analog pressure strip beside the screen. We do not need the object in his pocket. We need the authority that signs the command. In the atrium, Silas called the first vote. 3 trustees approved the emergency proxy. A 4th requested proof that Enzo remained medically impaired. Silas displayed his oxygen readings and chest injury summary, without Dr. Shaw's authorization. Enzo sat motionless, while the portable drain chamber pulsed beside his leg. His captain leaned close. Claire is no longer with our men. Enzo's fingers stopped against the chair arm. He looked toward the loading wing door. The captain whispered. Silas replaced the escort. Enzo remembered Claire's boundary. Until the signal, do not move. He pressed his palm flat against the table and stayed seated. Silas mistook restraint for defeat. He submitted the corridor sale agreement as a confidential stabilization plan, but removed the counterparty page and the 1130 price condition. Outside, counsel objected. The board chair overruled her. Silas called the next vote. The clock reached 1116. Inside the recovery closet, the capture appliance registered a handshake from an unlisted contractor terminal. The session used a fresh device certificate issued 9 minutes earlier. Tessa's shoulders dropped. He changed identities. Claire leaned closer. The certificate authority field read, Bellini Executive Infrastructure. The token serial was masked, but the signing chain terminated at the same executive issuer that approved the planted payroll batch. One authority connected the money, the service bridge, and the new terminal. Still not enough. The session requested Enzo's pressure limit. Claire entered 22, the safe value from her original worksheet. The remote user changed it to 46. Then the command armed a timed maintenance cycle for 1, 1, 2, 4. Tessa's recorder captured the signed packet. The disaster mirror blocked transmission. The analog test lung in the sealed simulation lab remained untouched, but the command itself had arrived. Claire exhaled once. Copy to both optical discs. Tessa began the write. Before it completed, the closet lights died. A red warning appeared on the battery display. External suppression. Discharge. Silas had activated the loading wing fire system. Foam began pressing beneath the door. Claire pulled the recorder from the rack without interrupting its internal battery. Tessa secured the first optical disc inside a numbered evidence sleeve. The second write failed at 68%. One copy. One chain. Outside, the decontamination shutters locked against manual release. Claire opened the smoke control cabinet and traced the physical relay labels. Her father's copper strip would not carry the load. She needed the local circuit breaker 50 feet down the sealed corridor. Tessa held up the evidence sleeve. We stay. The foam destroys the power supply. We leave the guards, take the disc. Claire looked at the ceiling duct, the same building system Silas had used to trap her twice. This time she knew the route. She removed the return air grill with the edge of her watch case. You carry the disc. Tessa stared at the narrow opening. Claire braced both hands beneath the grill and pulled it wider. Her plus-size body would not pass through the gap as built. She did not curse her body. She changed the building. She kicked the lower duct brace until one rivet broke, used the recorder as leverage against the second, and widened the opening by 6 inches. Go. Tessa crawled first with the evidence. Claire followed, shoulders turned hips, forcing the metal outward, scrubs catching on the raw edge. Behind them, the closet filled with white suppression foam. At 1121, the atrium board chair raised the final proxy ballot. Silas stood beside the table, with one hand resting over the folder that concealed the sale condition. Enzo's phone vibrated beneath his palm. A single offline message arrived from Tessa's emergency transmitter. Signed, Lethal Command captured VNT9B771111-638. Enzo did not open the full file. He looked at Silas. His brother believed Claire was contained, believed the trap destroyed, believed the vote seconds from completion. Enzo lifted his hand before the board chair could count the final ballot. Pause. Silas turned. You have no procedural basis. Enzo placed the phone face down. Check the chamber. Across the loading wing, Claire heard the phrase through the emergency speaker. It was her signal. She dropped from the duct into the corridor, foam streaking her navy scrubs, Tessa beside her with the sealed disc held above her head. The lethal command existed. Silas's new certificate existed. The vote remained open. Claire ran toward the atrium to take control of the proof before he could build his rebuttal. Claire Donovan entered the atrium with suppression foam drying across her navy scrubs and placed the sealed evidence disc on the board chair's open ledger. Hospital security moved toward her. Enzo Bellini lifted one hand from the table. She speaks. His voice carried less force than usual. The chest drain still hung beside his chair. The oxygen line cut pale marks beneath his nose. No one challenged him. Claire did not look for permission from the trustees. She turned toward the 6-story gallery shoulders, squared beneath torn fabric, full figure planted between Enzo and the loading wing doors, Silas controlled. Tessa Hale stood at her right with the battery-powered capture appliance. "Doctor." Shaw came through the opposite aisle, carrying the sealed relay record and Claire's original respiratory worksheet. 3 women, 3 independent chains. Silas remained beside the voting table in his watermarked black suit. His thumb rested against the edge of his board tablet. Claire pointed toward the ventilator log projected above them. "That record said I attacked Enzo at 1256. The medication dispenser proved I did not enter his unit until 105. She placed the printed receipt beneath the camera. The assignment roster was revised after my detention. The ventilator log omitted its required biometric field. Those facts did not identify the attacker. They proved the accusation was manufactured." Silas stepped toward the platform. She escaped. Custody, entered restricted infrastructure, and removed evidence after breaking its seal. Claire held up the first photograph from the generator room. The timestamp appeared beside an unbroken numbered seal. A second image showed Silas's guards entering with bolt cutters and a Bellini evidence bag before the seal was damaged. "Doctor." Shaw placed the recovered paper roll beneath the document camera. The mechanical print showed the generator transfer, Executive Bridge 14, activating the hidden service load, and Claire opening breaker, E7 19 seconds later. "I did not create that record," Claire said. "A transfer switch struck it onto paper while the digital network was offline." Silas lifted his chin. "You controlled the room when it was recovered." "Not before your men entered." Tessa displayed the guards' access scans from the basement door. The hospital facilities director stood from the second row and verified the seal number from the state inspection ledger. Silas looked toward him. The man did not sit. Claire continued. "This proves the lethal command came through the foundation floor. It proves I cut power after the attack began. It does not prove who sent it." Silas opened one palm toward the trustees. "Then she has proved nothing against me." Claire nodded. "That was true at sunrise." Tessa connected the capture appliance to the atrium display. The first screen showed 3 retired ventilator addresses. Each address had been delivered to a different recipient through separate, encrypted briefings. The vendor received one. Enzo's captain received another. Silas received VNT 9B771. Delivery records showed his private board vault opening the message at 601 a.m. The receipt carried the signature of his executive hardware token. Silas tapped the tablet against his palm. "The token was stolen during the fire," Claire said. "The old token was." She advanced the display. At 1107, a new medical device certificate had been issued through Bellini Executive Infrastructure. The certificate required 3 elements: executive authority, a registered secure device, and a live biometric confirmation. Tessa enlarged the device attestation line. The secure element serial matched the tablet in Silas's hand. The hospital wireless log placed that tablet inside the atrium. The biometric confirmation matched Silas's registered palm vein key. 9 minutes later, the same device signed a command, raising the false ventilator's pressure ceiling from 22 to 46, and arming the cycle for 1124. Claire pointed at the timestamp. No patient was connected. No technician had a service reason to enter. Only one recipient knew the address, represented Enzo's supposed transport unit. Silas looked down at the tablet. His fingers opened. The device struck the carpet without bouncing. He recovered before the trustees could react. A fabricated address cannot prove attempted murder. She invited a diagnostic test, then labeled the response lethal. Claire placed her handwritten worksheet under the camera. 22 was Enzo's safe ceiling. Doctor. Shaw displayed his chest images and the pressure injury produced at 32. 46 would have expanded the pneumothorax and compressed his heart. Claire said, the command also suppressed the high-pressure alarm and disabled local override. That was not a diagnostic test. Silas turned toward Tessa. Your suspended employee altered the packet. Tessa removed the optical disc from its numbered sleeve. The board secretary produced the second disc, delivered to her before the laboratory was sealed. Their write-once hashes matched. Outside counsel added a third record from the Independent Certificate Authority. Same command, same signature, same device. Claire let the trustees see each source before she moved to motive. She opened the data room archive and displayed Silas's corridor sale agreement. The version history showed the document uploaded before Enzo's ambush. Its price condition required Silas to obtain the voting proxy by 1130. The counterparty's signature came from a consortium that had tried to purchase Bellini's protected medical routes for 2 years. The sale became worthless if Enzo appeared competent today. Claire said, the command was scheduled 6 minutes before the vote closed. Silas reached beneath the board table. Claire saw his shoulder move before his hand reappeared. A red medical evacuation alarm ignited above the loading wing doors. The atrium speakers announced respiratory collapse. 4 contractors in emergency uniforms pushed through with a transport stretcher and a powered ventilator. Enzo's security captain blocked the first man. Another contractor flashed a hospital evacuation order bearing Silas's foundation seal. Trustees moved away from the table as the crew disconnected Enzo's oxygen line. Doctor. Shaw caught the tubing. No transfer. One contractor drove the stretcher between her and the chair. Claire heard the transport ventilator cycle before anyone attached it. Empty hose. Hard breath. Same mechanical rhythm. She seized the mask from the tray and snapped her test cap over the circuit. The machine pushed against the sealed line. Pressure climbed past 30 before its alarm activated. Second compromised unit, she said. Silas moved toward the loading doors. Claire released the external battery latch, pulled the battery sled free, and dropped the machine into darkness. Doctor. Shaw connected a manual bag. Enzo's captain drove the evacuation crew away from the chair and sealed the doors with the physical crash bar. No network command could reopen them. One contractor reached inside his coat. Claire kicked the stretcher brake free and shoved the steel frame across his path. The captain pinned him against the wall before the weapon cleared fabric. Silas crossed 3 steps toward the side exit. The board chair stood in front of him. Your authority is suspended. Silas looked toward Enzo. This institution belongs to our family. Enzo remained seated while Dr. Shaw kept air moving through the manual bag. Not anymore. Silas's hand shifted toward the board chair's shoulder. Claire stepped between them and raised the signed command printout. Touch him, and this becomes the least expensive charge you face. Silas stopped. He did not confess. He did not need to. The trustees had watched his private address receive the lethal command. They had watched his sale deadline. They had watched his second ventilator arrive under a foundation seal. Federal medical security agents and outside investigators entered through the public doors at the board secretary's request, not to rescue Claire, but to preserve the devices. Certificates, financial archive, and contractors before Bellini security could remove them. Enzo turned toward the gallery. The accusation against Claire Donovan was false. He placed his signed capture order on the table. I authorized her detention. That decision endangered her and her father. The record will show my responsibility. Then he looked at Claire and stopped speaking. The proof remained in her hands. The victory remained hers. By sunset, the atrium no longer displayed Silas Bellini's proxy ballot. It displayed an evidence preservation order. Investigators sealed the 2 ventilators, the executive tablet, the generator tape, the optical discs, and North Meridian's payroll archive under separate custody numbers. Silas lost foundation authority before he left the building. The hospital froze every contract, carrying his executive certificate. Bellini outside counsel turned over the corridor sale agreement and the shell company records. Enzo surrendered emergency voting control to an independent trustee rather than transfer it to another relative. The decision cost him the leverage his organization had used over hospitals, unions, and protected freight routes. Several Bellini contracts collapsed before midnight. He did not reverse the surrender. He instructed counsel to identify every shipment that had used false medical priority and place the records under external review. No deletions. He said, no family exceptions. His captains understood the price. Rival crews would test the weakened routes. Investors would abandon the company. Enzo accepted both consequences because restoring Claire's name without exposing the system that framed her would have been another form of concealment. The hospital board reconvened the hearing 2 days later, in the same atrium. Claire wore deep green scrubs and her repaired silver watch. The bruises around her wrists had turned yellow beneath the cuffs. Her father sat in the front row with a cane across his knees. He had inspected the recovered relay cabinet that morning and verified the wiring against the hospital's original plans. Doctor. Shaw presented the medical findings. Tessa presented the certificate chain. Claire presented the final incident timeline from the first hidden pressure command to the second compromised transport unit. No one interrupted her. Enzo sat behind the public rail rather than at the board table. He had no security detail inside the hearing. His chest tube had been removed, but the dressing remained beneath his shirt, and each deep breath still pulled one side of his body tight. When Claire finished, the board restored her clinical status, rescinded the attempted murder report, and notified the nursing authority that the accusation had resulted from altered evidence. The hospital president offered her the title of Executive Safety Advisor. Claire read the terms. The position reported to the same board that had suspended Tessa without reviewing the capture controls. She closed the folder. Independent authority or no agreement. The revised contract arrived the following week. Claire became director of an autonomous medical device safety unit, funded through a court-supervised trust. Enzo supplied the first payment, but held no seat, no veto, and no access to its investigations. North Meridian's penalty funds supplied the rest. Claire required 2-factor service records, write-once command archives, and mechanical fallback logs for every connected respiratory device in the hospital system. She hired Tessa as cybersecurity lead after the board reversed her suspension. Dr. Shaw chaired the clinical review committee. Claire's father accepted a consulting role limited to old electrical infrastructure and billed the trust at his normal union rate. No favors. No hidden debts. The first report named the executives who had ignored earlier device anomalies. Claire released it publicly. 3 trustees resigned. The hospital president kept his position only after surrendering emergency suspension power to an independent panel. Enzo came to Claire's office after business hours carrying the original capture order inside a plain evidence envelope. He wore no overcoat. No guards waited in the corridor. His left arm stayed close to his side while the rib fracture healed. Claire remained behind her desk. The repaired uniform from the hearing hung inside a clear preservation sleeve on the wall, not as humiliation, but as proof of the condition in which she had built the case. Enzo placed the order before her. His signature cut across the bottom line. "I signed this." Claire did not rescue him from the admission. He continued, "It endangered you. It exposed your father. I was wrong." No explanation followed. He placed a second document beside it. The Bellini company had withdrawn every complaint against Claire, waived confidentiality over the device investigation, and funded her legal costs through the supervised trust. Those repairs were required. She said, "They were. They do not purchase access to me. They do not." Claire watched him stand without reaching for the chair. The effort shortened his breath. He waited until it steadied. "May I ask you to dinner?" "One dinner. Your choice. Public restaurant. No closed floor. No armed men at the next table." Enzo nodded. "Agreed. And no one loses a job for bringing me coffee." One corner of his mouth moved not into a smirk, just acknowledgement of the boundary. "Agreed." Their first dinner did not erase the ICU. Claire asked about the protected freight routes Enzo had surrendered. He answered without disguising the criminal cost. Enzo asked why she still worked nights twice a month after taking the safety position. "Night staff see failures. Executives sleep through," she said. He did not offer to buy the hospital. He did not offer to remove the workload. He asked what resources the unit lacked, then accepted her answer when she told him procurement would go through the trust. Over the next 6 weeks, he appeared at 2 public hearings and testified against his brother's infrastructure network. Each appearance weakened his authority inside the organization. He did not use the sacrifice as romantic currency. Claire visited him once during physical therapy because Dr. Shaw said he had skipped a respiratory session to attend a legal deposition. She placed the spirometer on the table. "Use it or cancel dinner." Enzo lifted the device. Leverage. Clinical boundary. He completed every breath. Silas faced charges tied to medical device tampering, attempted murder, securities fraud, and the planted payment network. His defense attacked Claire's escape and the broken generator seal. The photographs, the facilities ledger, the optical discs, and the independent certificate records survived each challenge. The rival consortium denied knowing how Silas planned to secure the proxy, but its countersigned pricing condition established the benefit it expected from Enzo's incapacity. North Meridian's payroll administrator identified the executive approval chain without offering a convenient confession. The company's own automated archive supplied the decisive records. Silas remained intelligent through the end. He contested jurisdiction. He challenged custody. He blamed contractors. None of those arguments erased the secure device serial, the biometric confirmation, or the unique ventilator address delivered only to him. Claire's competence defeated him where power could not. 8 weeks after the blackout, morning sunlight filled the hospital simulation lab. Claire stood beside a training mannequin, wearing charcoal scrubs tailored for her full figure, not to hide it, but to let her move without fabric, pulling against her shoulders. A class of night nurses watched as she removed the respiratory mask and capped the hose. The machine stopped immediately. No hidden breaths. No remote pressure. The analog gauge returned to 0. Claire pointed toward the right once recorder. Trust the patient first. Then test the machine. Preserve both stories. When the class ended, Enzo waited outside the glass door. He did not enter. He did not send anyone to announce him. Claire finished sealing the calibration sheet, placed the evidence key in its locked drawer, and looked toward him. He raised the paper bag containing 2 coffees. She checked the labels through the glass. 1 black, 1 unsweetened with cream, the order she had chosen. Claire opened the door herself. Subscribe for more mature mafia romance stories, where courage, not power, decides who survives. Like the video, comment with the moment that stayed with you most, and share this story with someone who believes respect must be earned.